Iowa's News Now Sports has your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks.
We go to the airport, go to a hotel, go to a stadium, get off, play, get back on the bus, airport, and you're on your way home. So we'll see less of Los Angeles than anybody affiliated with the, following the team, that's for sure.
Yeah, so for you, it's a nice little vacation in the middle of November. For the Iowa Hawkeyes, it is a business trip looking to do something they haven't done in quite a while, win in the Rose Bowl. Welcome to this pre-UCLA Friday night football, all sorts of logistical craziness edition of Eye on the Hawks. Mitch Vick, Owen Sebring, Mike Howell here. Thanks to everybody who's watching live on a Wednesday at 1 o'clock on the Iowa's News Now YouTube channel, or if you're listening wherever you may be listening to podcasts, always appreciative of that. You can follow us at Eye on the Hawks on Twitter and the Iowa's News Now YouTube page and Instagram feeds for everything else that we'll be chopping up here, getting some vintage highlights of the Hawkeyes and Bruins from way back when, that last time, 38 years since these two teams have tussled. Last to talk about here as we look ahead to that Friday night matchup, 8 o'clock on Fox 28, including a little bit of an analysis on what this UCLA rush defense is really like. They're ranked 11th in the country coming into this game against a top 10 Iowa rushing attack. We're also going to look at the Bruins offense. Ethan Garbers playing about as well as any quarterback in the entire country over the last couple of weeks. Got that big win at Lincoln last Saturday. And our Hawkeye highlight, looking at the guy who, boy, if you had money on who was going to have the top two passing plays for the Hawkeyes over the last two seasons, I doubt you'd pick Zach Ortwerth, but that's where we are, an extended conversation with the sophomore from St. Louis. But let's start hearing from Kirk and company about not just this trip to the West Coast that's not for a bowl game, it's just for your average, ordinary 2024 Big Ten schedule game. And Kirk Ferentz trying to win one in the Rose Bowl for the first time.
One less day to prepare, but we try to keep it as normal as possible. Obviously, we add a little bit each day just to make up for the day that we're missing out on. But, Coach Ferentz, same message, offense, defense, special teams, just take advantage of the reps during practice. We try to slow it down a little bit just because we haven't had like an off day and we're going straight into another game week and then another game. But try to keep it as normal as possible, keep the same routine, and just go play as hard as we can.
Just got a lot of things you got to do during the week, back-to-back days. I think we're doing a good job handling the schedule, recovering at the same time. But yeah, it definitely changes some things. But I don't know how many Friday games I've had, but I feel like we've had our fair share of Friday games.
But yeah, we haven't had a good memory there. I haven't had one personally, and it's not like we get there, that often. But when you do get there, you hope you could have something good come out of it. And the only parallel I can give you, we never won in Pittsburgh when I was in the NFL, my hometown, and but at least we were able to change that, here. So maybe we can, break the streak here, hopefully.
Kirk Ferentz is referencing that 2014 Iowa win at Pitt against the Panthers there. C.J. Beathard coming in for Jake Rudock in that one, helping the Hawks to a victory there in 2014. Let's start with Kirk at the Rose Bowl, not in the Rose Bowl game, at the Rose Bowl Stadium itself. 0-3, 0-2 as an assistant. Lost that one in 2016 against Stanford. We won't live too much in that past there. We will go way back to 1986. As far as I know, it was a great kickoff. That's all I know. Dove into the archives here to get some vintage looks at UCLA and Iowa, again, 38 years since then. Let's just talk about that for a second. We love
the end zone letters look all the wrong size.
Huge. I don't know what font that is. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, that is bold, italicized, a little bit of everything, and the old striped shirts. You love to see that.
Oh, I like they're like rugby.
A little bit, yeah. And I was looking at the post. We've got the entire post game from Coach Fry saved as well. He's got an old Amana VIP golf tournament hat, which I know my dad worked for almost 40 years at Amana, and I worked there summers too. So it's a wild throwback as you're watching these highlights. What do we think about Kirk's history and trying to shake off the Rose Bowl ruins?
My earliest memories of Hawkeye fans, and I've said this before, was right when I was 12. I was around 2002, so like that season. But if you go a few seasons after that, they played Arizona State in 03 and 04 in home and homes. 04 one was on the road, and it was just a nightmare. what was it, like 41-7 or something. It was like
4-7 sounds right.
late kick
Andrew
return.
Walter, I believe, was the quarterback at ASU.
Yeah, and then when you talk about 4 years later, they played at Arizona.
That's 2010. Yeah,
It was 35-7. Iowa came all the way back, missed a field goal, missed an extra point to take the lead, so it was tied. Nick Foles comes back and does a game-winning drive. It just seems, and then the Rose Bowl you mentioned, it just seems outside of that Holiday Bowl in 2019, Kirk Ferentz-led teams do struggle when they head out west. So it's something that kind of makes you nervous heading into a short week.
Is that truly, like, do you guys truly believe there's a theme there, or is it just a coincidence that these West Coast games have gone poorly?
That's a good question.
I think that, that was the question for those guys that you heard from, and I suppose we should talk about that too, of just the logistics of it. You're combining some stuff that you might spread out over a couple of days during your week of practice into a little more. You're leaving, you've got jet lag to whatever extent there could be, going back 2 hours. That was the big stat for those West Coast teams coming to the Central Time Zone and the East Coast Time Zone for their first Big Ten games this year. Is that for a while it was like 1-7 in those visits.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about UCLA not having any sort of that to deal with, at least in a couple of weeks ago in that win against Rutgers. But there's probably something to say about it. I mean, you're a little off schedule. You're a little, especially when you're a program of routine, which I think you could make the argument most teams are, but particularly Iowa. You practice in the morning, you prep there, and maybe things get a little discombobulated if you let them. But yeah, I'm sure there's something to it.
I think that for the bowl games, I would say it's more of a coincidence, if you will. I mean, obviously, these have been Rose Bowls and big bowl games, so it's like they're coming up against great teams too. I think that the bowl games, I would take less into account there, but it's the regular season games where they're catching them on a short week where they might have to leave earlier. They, in the case of this week, are playing on a Friday. As you say, the schedule gets off. Just a little different than when you're used to playing 3 hours away in Minneapolis or 6 hours away in East Lansing. Things just feel a little different, and I don't know. I mean, it could be a weather thing too. I mean, I don't know, like if it's a trip to Arizona, for example, not that that's what this is, but that too, like the weather could play a factor in games like this.
Yeah, I do think the Arizona games, although they were night games, I think it was super hot, but I'm pretty sure the Arizona one in 2009 started at like 9:15.
The 2009 one was here, 2010.
2010, yeah, I get those two mixed up. I don't know why.
Yeah, but that was a night game.
That also, this is just a fun fact, that game was on ESPN, and I believe there was a Cam Newton Auburn-Clemson game that went into overtime, and by the time they actually went to the game, it was 14-0 Arizona. So I remember that vividly.
I had a buddy get married that night, but I remember that too, of getting into the game and watching it after halftime, wondering what's going on here. There were so many expectations in that 2010 season.
But back to this year, I do think that the Friday games against Maryland and Nebraska the past 10 years, I do think that it's less of a factor. Like, these players know how to work on a short week. They know what they're doing. You're also catching this UCLA team on the up when they played two lesser opponents, Nebraska and Rutgers. Rutgers has kind of struggled the last few weeks, and they've got 2 wins in a row after a very tough start to the schedule. So it might be a UCLA team that's tougher than their record.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. Something that is noteworthy, though, because I was about to say, it'll be interesting to see as time progresses with this new look Big Ten. As a Broncos fan, I know that's kind of what Mile High Stadium hangs their hat on. Is like, it's just a tough place for opponents to come and play because it's such a different. The elevation is different. The whole atmosphere is a little different than every other stadium they're going to play in. Big Ten teams could have kind of similar struggles when it comes to, especially those games in Los Angeles come October and November, where the weather is going to be a little different than what they're used to. Having said that, UCLA has not won a home game this season. All 3 of their wins have come on the road, so they have not been a team that's played well on their home field, and that could change this weekend. I know they're trying to get that first win at home in the Big Ten.
We'll say their 3 home games that they have lost have been against Indiana, which was early, but Indiana doing Indiana things to them. Number 1 Oregon, and then Minnesota, which is a game that came right down to that last possession.
That's what I was just going to say.
And by the way,
Indiana and Oregon.
In between, they played on the road at
games.
UCLA and at Penn State. It was, you cannot ask for a tougher stretch for any team, especially when you're getting into a new conference. You're Non-con is LSU, and then, oh, by the way, here, jump into the Big Ten and play a bunch of ranked teams.
That's a tough way to go about your non-conference schedule, too. They only had one non-conference home game. Iowa had 3 non-conference home games to only have that one against Indiana. Boy, tough schedule makers for UCLA.
I do wonder, though, what the crowd looks like. I've read and heard some places that there's a lot of Iowa fans that's going to be in attendance. I know UCLA does not, and USC for that matter, they do not get the attendance just because there's so much to do in LA and the sports teams. LA, the Dodgers were just in the World Series, so I would be interested to see. I do expect the Hawkeyes to make it out there. I know Sarah Riley, who comes in every Wednesday for us, she's going there, and her daughter lives out there. So it will be interesting to see how much of that is black and gold compared to gold and blue.
There you go. And they're going to be wearing throwbacks. Those UCLA throwbacks look really, really nice. I don't know if you can bring those up on the football page there as we move. Not just trying to get the fans out there for a great road atmosphere for the Hawkeyes, but of course Iowa hoping that number 10 rush offense in the country travels well with Kaleb Johnson leading the way and on the cusp. One more touchdown will give him the single-season program record, surpassing Sean Green, both tied with 20 right now total touchdowns. He would also, his next rushing touchdown for Kaleb would tie Sean's 20 from 2008. But UCLA has the 11th ranked rush defense in the country. Do we have those uniforms yet, Mike?
Mitch has been stalling over here trying to.
I was going to lead in before the soundbite. Yeah,
I do have them. It's just the funny thing is when you search for it, like there were basketball jerseys and gymnastics stuff coming up, and I'm like, there's a game this week where it is. I had to go back and.
There you go. Yeah, these are nice, man. Yeah. These are really, really nice. If you're watching on the YouTube channel,
I really dig these.
And blue look.
Yeah. Really nice. But again, they're going to be wearing those as they try to stop this Iowa rushing attack, 11th in the country. And we'll talk about the man you see there, Mr. Garbers, here in a bit too. But here's Iowa's offensive line and running back Jazz Patterson talking about what this UCLA front seven and beyond can bring.
Our game plan is to run the ball every single game we go into. That's kind of our identity. That's what we like to do. We have 3 very good backs. Which makes it hard on a defense, right? So, we're going to go in there, run the ball to the best of our ability, and, with the practice and getting all the looks that we can, hopefully come Saturday, our preparation has helped us out for that moment.
We feel like we could run on almost anybody. I mean, we're not scared of no team or anything. Like, we go in with the same mentality every day, in practice, in game. It don't matter. Even against our defense.
I don't know. I mean, if I'm being honest, I didn't even know that we were ranked at all in rushing, so I don't know if that stuff really matters at all, I mean, it's just kind of getting the call and then finding out who you're blocking and working together, so I don't know. I'm just excited.
I always love Jennings' perspective on everything because it's usually just like, I don't know. It's either like a who cares or like doesn't matter or whatever. So here is some context that I want to throw up about this UCLA rush defense because you see 11th in the country, but you see their record and you're trying to just make sense of everything. So I wondered, who have they played, and more specifically, what are those rush offenses they've gone up against? Here's a look, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, of every team UCLA's played so far and their rush offense rankings. Hawaii, 123rd. Indiana's the best of the bunch at 30th. LSU, 111th. Oregon, 61st. Penn State, 33rd. Minnesota, 115th. Rutgers, 41st, Nebraska, 104th. Again, Iowa is 10th. And you see there, Rutgers, Oregon, and Indiana all rushed for at least 120 yards. I think the most was about 154. All of them averaged 4 yards a carry. The only team in those top 4 rankings there that didn't rush for 100 yards was Penn State in a game where Nick Singleton did not play for them. Katron Allen got the lion's share, Nittany lion's share, I should say, of the carries, and I think had 21 for 79. So it was right around that 4-yard average, but they have played not tremendous running teams. And then on the other side, when they've got, I think, the 115th ranked passing defense, so everyone's wondering, well, should Iowa start throwing a little bit more? They've also played 3 top 20 pass offenses. LSU, you see there, 111th in rushing. They're 6th in passing. Oregon, 11th in passing. Indiana, 19th. So this is a defense and defense that on both sides has played a lot of different styles, and maybe those rankings are reflective of just the difficulty or lack thereof on the rush side of what they faced so far.
Just rolled right through a Mike Caliber joke on that one. Well done. I wonder if we do see a little bit more of a passing game. With how good their rushing defense is, their passing defense is second to last in the Big Ten. They give up 261 pass yards per game. I don't wonder if we're going to see Brendan Sullivan open it up a little bit more, even though he's not maybe going to be known for his passing in his career at Iowa. I just wonder if that's going to be their approach for what they do this weekend.
It could be a game where you can start to get a rhythm in that passing game. I don't think this coaching staff is one to that philosophy where it's like easier opponent. Let's try and fine tune some things. I think they, obviously they want to stick to their game plan and win the game. But it could be one of those games, if they struggle early on. One of the things that Nebraska struggled with last week is, that for those first drive, they only had one drive in the first quarter. It was 3 plays, 3 and out, and I think they were all passes. Maybe the first was a run. But they only had 20 plays in the first half and to UCLA's 38. They were just able to control the ball. And if Iowa can't get a first down through the rushing game, and that UCLA offense is able to move, which is still a question mark, but their quarterback's playing pretty well right now. It could be one of those times where you get late in the game and the score's not in your favor, and it's like, well, now you're chasing and you have to pass. So it's just going to be interesting what happens in that first quarter, I think, to really see what Iowa's game plan is.
Yeah, and they're going to be, I don't think we've heard yet, and we may not know until Friday if they're going to have Luke Lachey or not. It sounds, in my opinion, maybe doubtful that they have Luke Lachey. Mm-hmm. Still seems like he's a little banged up, but could be the game that they do open up some of those other tight ends that Zach Ortwerth and Johnny Pascuzzi get utilized a little bit more.
Yeah, so Luke, go through warm-ups on Saturday before the Wisconsin game. He was in pads, dressed, had a lot of tape, maybe a wrap as well on that left leg, so we'll see what Luke does. But again, UCLA, a team that's got that great rush defense ranking, but again, who have they really played? And the ones that they have played that are highly ranked have had success. They haven't played anywhere near ranked to the top of Iowa with that offensive line and Kaleb Johnson. Just saying, maybe they aren't going to need to throw as much as you might think, just looking at things from the first go. Mike just brought up Ethan Garbers, UCLA's quarterback, who been around for a while, a veteran guy, has played a lot of ball these last 2 games. He is playing not just as well as anybody in the Big Ten, but you could argue as well as anybody in the country. Before Kaleb Johnson was Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week this week, Garbers was last week for his game against Rutgers. Here is Iowa's defense about what they are seeing from number 4 in blue and gold.
Oh, he's really good. He's a really good quarterback. I think he does really good, like seeing the coverages. Always has the ability to extend the play. I think he had a big run against Rutgers. So he's athletic. We got to respect him outside the box. Does a good job getting the ball to his receivers. Doesn't really force anything.
Really, he's gone through his progression really well. Being able to get the ball out, he's getting the ball out really fast. He has a really good tight end, so being able to get him the ball. All of his skill players at UCLA, so they can recruit really good players. So he's been able to get them the ball in space and they've been able to make plays. So.
He's a really electric guy back there. He makes that offense go. He can run around. He can throw it. So it'd be a great challenge for us, and I know we're excited to get out there and go try to stop it.
Ethan Garbers in his first games before these past 2 this season, 4 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, was completing less than 60% of his passes. These last 2 games, he's 49 for 63. That's just a hair under 78% completions, 602 yards, 6 touchdowns, no picks. He has rushes of 57 yards. That was his longest one against Nebraska, and then had a 49-yard rushing touchdown against Rutgers. What do we think about this guy and what he can do? Maybe a parallel to Aiden Childs and what we saw in East Lansing a few weeks back of a guy who can use his feet. He isn't necessarily a quote-unquote running quarterback, but he can move it in the pocket, extend the play, and again, when he wants to tuck and run, he can do a heck of a job there. And he's, again, they talked about it, he's got a lot of weapons around him to use as well.
Yeah, last week he had a 57-yard scramble in a man defense situation for Nebraska that really was at a crucial point in the game. I admittedly said last week that I hadn't had a lot of eyes on UCLA, or maybe it was the week before, because just, the record early on and just the times they play. I did rewatch that Nebraska game, and this kid looked like freaking John Elway out there. I don't think he made an interceptable throw at all. He was on the money for everything. And when I looked at his 9 for 10 touchdown interceptions, obviously that's probably playing against a defense who can put some pressure on him. He is pretty good in the pocket, I think, and his receivers all caught their passes. So, it's a little dangerous, and that Aiden Childs comparison is pretty good in my opinion, because he's one that if you get pressure on him and you force some mistakes, he could turn the ball over if you don't get to him, and he's allowed to kind of, find his progression, then he can beat you. So I do think this is going to be another test for the secondary, who's played well in the past few weeks, but admittedly hasn't played a tough quarterback or a tough offense in the past 2 weeks, and maybe that's why, the defense has played so well. So it will be interesting to see, what secondary shows up this Friday.
Even against a lot of really good opponents, Ethan Garbers is still sitting towards the top of the Big Ten in a lot of numbers. I mean, he's thrown for 243 yards a game, which is, again, up there with guys like Dylan Gabriel and Curtis Rourke and Will Howard. And I would almost say Miller Moss, but I think I just saw that he got benched for USC. I believe he's not going to start going forward for them.
I'm not sure about that one. I haven't
I heard that. But he's a guy that even in some of these losses, he's still been able to put up points, put up yards, and belongs in that upper echelon of quarterbacks that we see in the Big Ten.
The one thing I will say, too, the first thought I had when I was watching, I'm like, ooh, what team is he going to play for next year? Assuming that UCLA doesn't build on anything from this year. But he looks to be one of those guys who might hint. This I have no idea, but it just seems like one of those quarterbacks that will be well chased if he enters. Sought after, yes.
He will be a commodity, certainly. Big factor here that wasn't in East Lansing for reasons we still aren't 100% on. I would assume Deshaun Lee will start on this road game, and we saw that right corner position and what Michigan State was able to do with the rotation there with John Nestor and TJ Hall. Deshaun coming up his first interception, one of the best plays he's probably made as a Hawkeye, breaking up that would have been touchdown. Before that one, he had a shot at another pick too. He's playing about as well as you can ask for. You team him up with an all Big Ten guy, possibly All-American caliber guy, and Jamari Harris. That secondary does feel like it's playing about as well as you could. And Mike, I'll ask you for the YouTube audience, roll those Iowa defense highlights, because Iowa is plus 10 in turnover margin in 2024 so far, and I might be even lowballing that a little bit. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they're one of the best teams in turnovers in the country. UCLA -5 in turnover margin. Now, they protected the ball really well, and a lot of credit goes to Garbers over the last couple of games for that, not throwing any interceptions. But again, he's got 9 before that, and this is about as good as a secondary, good of a defense as he's faced in that stretch. Big opportunities there for Iowa's defense to slow down this Bruins offense.
Yeah, it's funny. We compare him to Aiden Childs. Right now, Aiden Childs is number 1 in the Big Ten with 11 interceptions this year. Ethan Garbers is second with 9 picks he's thrown this season.
Yeah, but again, he's cleaned it up, so we'll see. It's certainly a tough opportunity, but you go up against an Iowa secondary, an Iowa defense that has just played really, really impressively since that trip to East Lansing, where nothing seemingly went right. The tackling's been crisp, and the interceptions and turnovers have continued. So a lot of opportunity there. Speaking of opportunity, Zach Ortwerth, I imagine, was not penciled in to be a starting tight end going into the 2023 season, his true freshman year coming out of St. Louis. But when Luke Lachey breaks a leg, when Eric All tears an ACL, all of a sudden tight end 5 or 6 starts climbing up the depth chart. We saw him with that one catch against Rutgers, which ended up being the longest pass play for the Hawkeyes in 2023, 54 yards. Because of more injuries this year to Lachey getting banged up and Addison Ostrenga missing the last few weeks, here comes Zach Ortwerth again to prove it wasn't just a freshman phenom flash in the pan. He is continuing to make plays. A 31-yard catch against Illinois State, one of a big play there, and then 52 yards late in the fourth quarter against Wisconsin. Zach Ortwerth, for the first time all season, was made available to the media. I'm sure plenty of people have been talking about him lately. So our Hawkeye highlight this week, the sophomore from St. Louis who looks to be in the next lineage of tight end U. Here's our conversation with him.
Abdul said at the beginning of the season, like, he looked at you as a 1, and now you've had to become a 1. Again, what has just this whole journey been like over the last year or so since Eric and Luke get hurt, and you've really seen those reps go up as a 18, 19-year-old?
Yeah, no, it's been fun, and it's been the process you've been talking about. Just trying to get better in the run game specifically, and learning from all the older guys. I mean, they might, when they're hurt, they provide a new set of eyes on you that you might not see, and they're on the perspective of a player as well. So, I mean, they have a critical eye too, and they want the room to get better, and they're always just trying to push the standard of the room, which has been set for a long time in our room. They're just trying to move it forward, and just hopefully the young guys can keep carrying on that tradition. That's just been my focus, is picking up what they've been doing well and watching tape on them and seeing where I can improve, especially.
Where do you think you've improved the most over the last year or so since getting those first runs with the 1s?
Yeah, I've gotten better in the run game. I still have a long ways to go there. I mean, the pass game, I feel like that's something that if you just play fast, that's something that can come to you. And I'm still working on that. I still have a lot to improve on. But definitely the run game, seeing those pictures better, has helped in getting that experience in the run game and seeing it live against our guys too has really helped getting those 1 reps and their speed and their physicality kind of getting pushed around a little bit when you're younger than a lot of them. But, that's how you get better. I mean, just getting your butt kicked in a couple times, that kind of forces you to get better and mature.
Yeah. Have you always been a guy that can take the top off a little bit? I mean, I think 10 catches, 3 of them have gone for 30, 2 of them have gone for 50. I mean, has that always been a thing that you've prided yourself on, or is that just opportunity presenting itself?
I think that's been opportunity presenting itself. If you would have told me coming out of high school that I would have had those long catches, I would have told you you're probably crazy, because that's what the type of player I wasn't that in high school. I played with some guys who could take the top off in high school. I wasn't that guy. I guess it's just been opportunity in the right place at the right time. Just trying to make the play when the number was called or when the number wasn't called, but the opportunity presented itself. Just trying to make the most out of it.
Dallas Clark hangs around the program quite a bit. Have you had some conversations with him, picked his brain at all? Because that's the guy who kind of started setting that standard.
Yeah, for sure. He's been around, and whenever he's in meetings, you're always critical. He's always critical, and you're always writing down whatever he has to say during meetings. He'll watch film with us. He did it a couple times during camp. He was over here in the spring. Just whatever he says, you're writing down a lot. I can go back to my notebook and what he's saying, and that's stuff that you will really take, because he really, like you said, he set that standard however many years ago. And I mean, that's a standard we're all trying to live up to. So when he speaks, we're all tuned in. I mean, when he's out at practice, he's breaking a sweat with us. He's into it. So it's kind of hard not to get into it with him. So he brings an energy, and he brings a perspective that's very important for all of us to listen to.
I was very glad that Zach confirmed, I think, what a lot of people believe when they look at Dallas and say, man, he still looks like he could play. He's out there breaking a sweat. I can absolutely envision Dallas Clark running routes at practice and maybe trying to throw a block or two. But, boy, Zach Ortwerth, a guy, again, who was probably not expected to play a whole lot, if not any, last year, and certainly maybe just sparingly this year. But he's been pretty impressive.
Something really interesting, because you had a chance to chat with Zach, and then maybe 10 minutes later I went over and talked to him for a while, and he's got a lot of interesting stories to tell about his life. We've discussed, I think it was even just on Monday's show that we talked about the number of guys on this team who are kind of short-term football players that didn't join until later in life. Zach Ortwerth didn't start playing football until his freshman year of high school. He wasn't allowed to, he said. Both his dad and grandpa played college football. His grandpa played at Mizzou back in the 60s. His dad played at Drake University, and his parents still would not let him play football until he was a freshman in high school. He was a basketball guy, he says. He was a 4-year varsity starter for basketball, and so he comes in. He didn't even play his sophomore year because he got hurt, so he only really had 3 years of competitive football coming to the University of Iowa.
That's really interesting because,
isn't that crazy?
A lot of kids, there is a debate too whether, the headshots as a child are worth it, when you're playing and you're like 12 or 11. When I was in 7th grade, I got my bell rung a few times, just that kind of stuff. But because Jamari didn't play until late, right?
Yep.
And I'm blanking on the other ones, but it seems like there's 3 or maybe 5 guys who are impact players that didn't play early in high school. Or in their life.
We talked to. Oh, well, maybe we're just thinking of Kyle Conradi, that he didn't play until his junior year of high school. But he's a guy too that I had the post yesterday about his sports lineage, having both his dad and grandpa play college football. His mom played college volleyball at Northern Illinois. His cousin played at St. Thomas. His aunt played volleyball at Tulsa. Just everybody in this family just has super athletic kids.
Can I workshop a theory on why it seemingly had like I know Luke Lachey has the most receiving yards out of anyone still, I believe, with this season with
much,
200.
Yes.
But it seemed on against Wisconsin, Ortwerth was not more dynamic, but a little more open. I think a lot of people are keying in on Luke and say you're not going to get 10 catches a game. I wonder once he's out, the defense is like, okay, we can go back and try and focus on other things. And then I remember that pop pass, no one even saw him release, and he got 52 yards on it. I wonder if, just having those tight ends who are just ready to go, develop for a year or so. I guess he played a little bit last year, and just, once someone goes down with injury or their name gets called, they're just ready to have that talent, and the development's been here in this program. And, the theory, I guess, would be just the defense just not keying on him, and he's been able to get, some passes the last few weeks.
You can't say enough about Abdul Hodge, too. A guy who, again, made his hay and name as a linebacker, flipping to the other side, and I know he was coaching them at South Dakota as well, but coming in and just, again, the word you kept hearing is the standard, and Coach Hodge has continued to keep that standard, and boy, in a lot of ways raising it too, which is saying something at Iowa. So it has been a ton of fun to see Zach Ortwerth thrive and, again, be a big play, take the top off guy, as much as he maybe didn't expect it. Still waiting for his first career touchdown, but boy, you got to think with the opportunities he's getting, heck, what better place to do it than Hollywood there. Fourth leading receiver right now for Iowa in terms of yardage with 125 yards. Luke Lachey still leading with 209, 24 receptions, also leading the way. Jacob Gill, though, 21 receptions this season. Boy, fun to see him, not to get totally off topic, but just to see him come in and have a really nice campaign with his bestie, Brendan Sullivan, out there, and Gill, I think, had all of 8 catches for 92 yards during his Wildcat career at Northwestern. He's really been as good a piece as you could ask for.
When do you guys think, because I believe last year's receiving yards leader was Nico Ragaini with like 255, something like that. And this year, Luke has how many yards? 209 or something. When will somebody on this year's team surpass Nico's number of passing yards receiving, or will it happen in the regular season?
I could see Jacob doing it this weekend on Friday. Yeah, Nico had 255 last year.
I mean, Jacob's such a weird case because he has games where he like gets some big catches and then he is like
he's
just not part of the game plan for some weeks, it seems like, and so you never know, like, is he going to be there or is he not going to have any catch at all?
And depending on when Luke comes back, he could if he doesn't play this week, and then maybe I assume the bye week would get more time to get healthy, but I still don't know much about how severe that is, but he's missed 2 games now, right?
Yeah, again, like the legs all taped up, and it looked like maybe there was a sleeve too. And as we've mentioned, Reese Vanderzee won't be playing on Friday. Neither will Addison Ostringa. I think the hope is that to get at least one of them, if not both, back after the bye. Same goes with Cade McNamara in whatever role he'll be in.
Is it even wild to say that it won't happen? Like, because
it's certainly possible.
There's more people that get the ball, and like those top guys are kind of hurt outside of Gill, and Sullivan might not want to throw as much. He can run the ball. So this offense might not have more passing yards in it, which, say what you will. If the ground game's effective, then it's a moot point. But, so who knows? Maybe they won't until next year.
It's possible, yeah. It just would be interesting with how much better this offense is performing. We don't have a leading receiver surpass what they did last year. Who knows? It could be maybe Zach Ortwerth's going to come out here and have a 100-yard game and surpass
a 50-yard catch.
And again, Seth Anderson, he's got that speed. We've seen it. So maybe he's as he starts getting healthy, and then you got Bowie and Howard and Caden Weegan. Wouldn't be shocked if Caden did something big too.
Kaleb Johnson has 109 yards. I mean, he breaks off a 60-yarder, he could get up there.
It's just not the offense, but wouldn't you agree? Like, just a deep ball is fun to watch. Like what play do we always go back to? Like one of maybe the greatest plays, even in Iowa loss. Tavon Smith.
Beathard did Tavon Smith. Yeah.
When you see one of those balls just off the top, that's just not this offense this year. And well, I mean, if you're rushing for 300 yards like you did last week, who cares really? But it is, yeah. And just being able to say during the game, he's going for it. Is my favorite thing in football.
It's fun, especially for Iowa fans. They're just starved for a long pass. We'll take it. Again, high expectations after Seth had that long score on the second play of last year. They're due, and you got to think one's coming sooner or later. Again, maybe UCLA an opportunity. Let's turn to our picks now. There are some wild spreads coming up this week. We're going to start Saturday with a game you can watch on Fox 28. Purdue at Ohio State. The Buckeyes are 38-point favorites. Thoughts?
Is it enough?
You tell me,
Purdue's
Michael.
trash. I'm taking the Buckeyes. Let's go. I'm not betting it, though.
Let me look here through Purdue's schedule. So they did lose to Notre Dame by 59. They lost to Wisconsin by 48. They beat Indiana State 49-0. Hey, these guys aren't all that bad. I think that Ohio State could take their foot off of the gas at maybe 28 points or something.
That's the only concern if you're betting that. So you're going to go Purdue?
I'm going to, pick Purdue to keep it within a narrow 6 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think Ohio State probably piles it up. Coming off a big win at Penn State, that offensive line is starting to figure some things out. So I think Will Howard might not have to throw a lot. But why wouldn't you when you got Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Ibuka and all those great weapons? But that could be pick your poison there at the Horseshoe.
They're number 2 ranked team in the country right now, I think. in the playoffs. Didn't get to watch the playoff show because there was a little thing called the election last night that we had to work on. But anyway, do you think that style points comes into it? Like they are going to feel the need to just run the score up?
Maybe.
Because they could lose in a Big Ten title game. They could have 2 losses. And even though they're 2, say they drop one, like
and
you want to be as high.
Could be both to Oregon. I mean, there's a chance that happens.
That was a question that Reese Davis gave to Ward Manuel, I believe that's the CFP committee chair, about like, are you guys going to factor in guys who get to the conference title game and lose, like because they're going to have one more loss than a lot of teams? And he, kind of gave the typical non-answer that a CFP chair is going to give. Mm-hmm. But you have to think so that they're obviously going to put in a number 2 team in the conference over a number 3 team in the conference, even if they understand that loss is less significant than a loss that the number 3 team had to somebody else earlier in the season, but still is significant to at least think about like those teams that are going to have more losses down the stretch. Purdue's poor Purdue. Like their last 4 games are against Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State, and then Indiana. They have 3 top 10 teams on the schedule.
Reverse UCLA
to close out the schedule. My Lord, this Purdue team is going to win 1 game against an FCS opponent all year.
Well, from that one we move to Piscataway, Minnesota, 6-point favorite at Rutgers. This is an interesting one. I don't know if you guys know the history. So P.J. Fleck was wide receivers coach for Greg Schiano, not only during Schiano's first round at Rutgers, but also ended up going to Tampa Bay with the Buccaneers and was his wide receiver coach for a year before he got that head gig at Western Michigan. And, of course, the Rutgers quarterback this year, Ethan Kaliak-Manis, who was PJ's and the Gophers quarterback.
Ethan Kaliak-Manis revenge game?
Hey, we'll see. Again, 11 a.m. on NBC. The Gophers playing pretty well and coming off their 3rd straight win.
To me, it seems like these are just teams going in opposite directions, which sometimes gets a little tricky. At least I tend to follow these trends maybe a little bit too much, but Rutgers has lost 4 in a row coming in. They lost to UCLA. They lost to USC. They lost bad to Wisconsin. They lost to Nebraska 14-7, and Minnesota seems to have figured it out since the Iowa game, so I think I like Minnesota to win by a touchdown plus.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you, although like it would be a total Minnesota thing because I've been trashing them all year. The one time I pick them, they lose or win by 3. But, I just don't think Rutgers is good, and my Rutgers win total, I think 6.5 looks pretty bad right now. I thought their schedule was easy enough at the beginning of the season, but I'll take the Gophers.
It is a matter of who knows the other better, right? Does Greg, the mentor, know flex tendencies and what can happen there a little better, or does the student become the master here, so to speak? But you're right, Minnesota's playing so well. That secondary and that defense, I think 2nd in the nation in turnovers and interceptions. They played terrific, so I'll take the Gophers to cover as well.
We talk about teams that are better than what their record shows. Boy, Minnesota, a team that could certainly qualify.
They could be 8-1.
They could be 8-1. Lost to North Carolina by 2. They lost to number 12 Michigan by 3. Iowa was the only game where they really looked lousy all year, and that was only in the second half of that game, really. So that's a better Minnesota team than what their record indicates.
And the fact that they're 115th in the nation in rushing too. This is a team that, prided itself on running the ball so well with Darius Taylor and Marcus Major. Max Brosmer's been the guy the last few weeks. But yeah, that was against UNC. They missed a field goal at the end of regulation that would have won that. And then of course you had that offsides on the kickoff that. Very skeptical about what that call was. A lot of Gopher fans are that maybe it would have given them an opportunity to go get that win in Ann Arbor. So yeah, that's a team that's been really close. And just a reminder, when you get in November, boy, the margins and 1 or 2 plays can make all the difference. We turn to Indiana now in Bloomington. The Michigan Wolverines visiting the Hoosiers on Saturday. That's a 2:30 game that you can watch on CBS2. The Hoosiers in the top 10 now, finally, are 2 touchdown favorites over the Maize and Blue.
We've talked this year about whether either team from last year's national championship is going to get to a bowl game. Michigan right now sitting with 5 wins. Their last 3 games are against Indiana, Northwestern, and Ohio State. So they've got a good chance to get that 6th win and get bowl eligible against Northwestern, you got to think. But I think
come on, Wildcats.
Two of these are going to – wouldn't that be sweet? I think I've been I keep being skeptical of Indiana and what their offense can produce against some of these teams, but they keep proving me wrong. So I got to take Indiana to win this by a few touchdowns.
Side note, Washington is also 5-4, and they play at Penn State, UCLA at home, and at Oregon. So if they don't beat UCLA, a team that's trending up, they both might miss bowl games, which I'm kind of rooting for. Yep. I'm taking Indiana too. I've watched this team a few games, and I think they passed the sniff test. You said their schedule hasn't been that great. It gets tougher towards the end where they play Ohio State next week, I believe. but we'll find out what they're made of next week. But yeah, I think they beat the Wolverines at home.
Throw me down for the same. People always point to they haven't played anybody yet, and they've beat the snot out of everybody they've played. So what more do you want from them? They don't make the schedule. And again, Kirk Signetti can't say it enough every single week. Just what they've done, bringing in guys and changing that attitude and culture in Bloomington's been fun to watch, as long as they're not on your schedule. Maryland at Oregon, 6 p.m. kick on BTN. Oregon, 25-point favorites against the Terps.
Oregon screwed me last week with a late touchdown to cover, so I guess I'm going to have to take the reversal this week and take Oregon to win by 4 touchdowns.
Man, I'm just getting nervous because I just realized I picked all favorites right now, and but I just don't think this Maryland team's any good either, and they're playing on the road. If this game was in Maryland, I'd consider the time zone thing. Maybe they beat them by 21 instead. But I will go with Oregon. Well, you know what? I'm just going to go against my better judgment and pick Maryland with the spread.
Hey, Billy Edwards could make this a shootout some way, maybe. We'll see.
Who knows? Maybe Oregon's going to...
Underrated quarterback. Yeah. He'll be a good challenge for the Hawkeye defense coming up in a couple weeks after the bye. I'll take Oregon to cover, too. Gabriel's playing so well. I believe they do have a wide receiver that might be out with an injury. So we'll see. But again, even though they've got a quote-unquote middle-of-the-road rushing offense, watch that team, and they'll move the ball how they want. Finally, we go to the first game out of all these. Iowa at UCLA, Friday night, 8 p.m. on Fox 28. Eastern Iowa OT goes on at 12:15 maybe. We'll see as we wrap up those quarterfinals for high school football. Iowa, the Hawkeyes, 5.5-point favorites on the road against the Bruins.
It feels a little disrespectful to Iowa the way they put it on opponents the last couple weeks to only have them as 5.5-point favorites. I mean, I know there's a few other variables in play here, but after the way that they've just dominated their last couple games, you'd think that they would have given them a few more points there, make them at least a touchdown favorite. I'm going to talk about a few special teams numbers here. First, UCLA has only returned 4 punts this entire season. They have gone games at a time without returning a single punt. 4 this year is second to last in the entire nation. However, they do lead the Big Ten in punt return average, 14.2, although they have not had a punt return over 20 yards per. Somehow they're always kind of in that 14 to 18-yard range when they return a punt. So having said that, who knows if Reese Dakin is going to even let them return a punt this time around. They're bottom 3 in the Big Ten in turnover margin. Iowa is number 2 in the league right now. That could be a factor with the way that Iowa's defense is turning the ball over lately. As much as UCLA has played well against some of their opponents lately, I really feel like Iowa, too, is hitting its stride right now, and I think this could be another game where they could possibly pile up 35 to 40 points.
Yeah, I'm going back and forth just because I do, as an Iowa fan for the past 20 years, I do take stock into the West Coast trips outside of that Holiday Bowl against USC. A Friday night, short week, and ESPN even has it as a 4.5-point spread. One thing I will say is I do think Vegas disrespects Iowa a little bit or doesn't respect them, even when it comes to the point total, just because they hit the overs. The overs have been around 40 points every game, and they're 8-1 this year on the overs. Right now it's 44.5, so if you're expecting that, you should probably take that over. But, with a 5.5-point spread, I do think I'm going to take UCLA here, and I don't think they're going to win. I think I was going to win, but I just think it's one of those weird, icky Friday games.
Yep, for sure, and I've been on the fence about that too. I am, though, going to take Iowa to cover against maybe better judgment. I think the lumps you took in East Lansing maybe pay dividends on this one, even though it is that West Coast trip and it's a little different than going east and you lose a day and things like that. But I think you're going to have Deshaun Lee out there, so that corner spot's going to be opened up, an opportunity to force Garbers to make a mistake that he hasn't these last couple of games. And then I think whether it's Brendan throwing it a little bit more or just, you heard Logan Jones. We run the ball, and that's what we do, and that's what we're going to do. Wouldn't be shocked to see maybe Kamari finally get a touchdown or something like that. And again, just watching those opportunities for some big plays across the board. Again, I'm still rooting for those Caden Weegan sweeps to maybe bust a big one there. Maybe Jacob Gill having a little more volume as well. So I'm going to take the Hawkeyes to cover, and I do think that offense will travel, and I think the defense will have a get-right road game compared to the last one they had there at MSU.
There is half me, too, that kind of has the feeling of the MSU game.
It's a tough thing to flush.
Worrying, yeah.
It's a tough thing to flush. Again, things are a little different. Castro won't be hurt, and again, Deshaun Lee will be out there playing. Again,
be some differences.
Best game is a Hawkeye for him for sure.
Definitely be some differences, and it's just that quarterback position with a dangerous quarterback. You haven't seen one since that Michigan State game, but hopefully, you can put some pressure on him and not let him or force him to make mistakes instead of making those plays.
We always read in maybe a little too much to how things are said and mannerisms and stuff like that. I couldn't help but notice Jay Higgins with a big smile on his face. He's a really good player. maybe Jay saw something that he might. Jay Higgins could end Friday leading the team in interceptions for the season. What a story that would be for the Butkus semifinalist for a second year in a row. You'd love to be a finalist and be the second Hawkeye in 3 years to bring that back. Final thoughts before we wrap up today.
Really hoping Iowa comes out with a purpose and on a business trip, and just like heading into that bye week 7-3 with 2 winnable games on, looking at potentially 10 wins if you win the bowl game. So that's why I tend to think Iowa doesn't have one of those MSU games, but with a short week on a Friday, you never know what's going to happen. You never know kind of what voodoo will happen. So I'm a little nervous heading into it. I also think it's going to be cool watching Iowa in the Rose Bowl again, even though it's not the actual Rose Bowl game.
It's got to be better than 16,
counts.
Right?
Yeah.
It's got to be better than New Year's Day.
Well, hopefully.
I really do just think that since that Michigan State game, I've seen this team play so much differently. They really are a different team than what they were in the first half of the season, especially now with Brendan Sullivan at quarterback. I think that not having the pressure of trying to get to the Big Ten title game, trying to get to the CFP, I think that this team has just played a little bit more relaxed. They've had a chance to just go out there, enjoy football, get some turnovers, score some touchdowns. This team is playing just differently than what I've seen out of them the last couple of years.
They've been fun, and winning certainly raises morale as well. So we will be back here Monday to recap everything from that trip west on Eye on the Hawks. Again, follow us on Twitter, the Iowa News Now Facebook page and Instagram page, where you can follow all those clips and stay with us live on those Monday and Wednesday podcasts. We will be back here Monday at 1 o'clock to recap everything from the Bruins and Hawkeyes. See you then on Eye on the Hawks.